Hi guys, BuildZoid here, and I did these for X570, and I'm doing them again because people like watching them, and yeah, also it's like honestly I was thinking of going to sleep, but then I noticed some things about the Asrock Z490 lineup, and I was, you know what, let's try do this. If I'm lucky, I'm gonna get a video. If I'm not lucky, then I'll get a rough take so that I can, get a better take later. So yeah, we're going to be using Newegg for pricing right now. As far as I know, so for the motherboards, like I have actual retail prices for certain motherboards. I'm not specifically for Asrock, and what Newegg is listing agrees with those. So I'm going to assume that Newegg isn't like tweaking the prices in any direction for any manufacturer, because for the boards that I do know the pricing, it's correct. So yeah, anyway, let's go through Asrock's motherboard lineup, starting, of course, with the Z490 Aqua. And, well, actually, you know what? We'll just skip the Aqua. Because, okay, like, here's the thing. It's $1,100. It comes with a stupid water block, and that's all you really need to know, as far as I'm concerned. Like, the fact that it's $1,100 and the fact that it comes with a unnecessary water block that, for all I know, isn't really that like if you're gonna put a water block on your motherboard, now you need to not only send it to people who review motherboards, now you also need to send it to people who review water blocks, because reviewing water cooling parts if you want to do it correctly, it takes quite a bit of effort. So yeah, if you're gonna put and realistically, Asrock doesn't expect to sell that many of these, so I doubt they're probably gonna send it to a couple reviewers. They're gonna be like, oh, it's the greatest thing we've ever seen, and yeah, it's like $1,100 of fluff. We are going to ignore the Aqua past that. Basically, full cover water blocks on motherboards and $1,100 price tags. No, just no. That's all there is to say for me. It's just nope. So let's take a look at the Taichi. So, um, the main thing I'd like to point out is so actually I'm not sure if so for some of these boards, Newegg has actually better pictures than Asrock's own website, which I think is incredibly stupid. Oh yeah, this is one of those boards where that is actually the case. Like, we have a pic of the actual back, so it's cool that they have the backplate. I like motherboard backplates; they're good. They're a good idea. The rear I/O, we can actually look at Asrock's own website. Rear I/O looks okay, I guess. You have a wait. That's BIOS flashback. Wait, do they not have a clear C? What? Why would you? Did they put a clear CMOS internally and not one on the rear I/O? Because, yeah, that's exactly what they did. That's a clear CMOS button down there. So yeah, like see, this is Asrock design decisions at its peak, right? Where it's like, yeah, so if you punch in a bunch of bad BIOS settings, and hopefully the motherboard might actually be really good at recovering from failed overclocks, but you never know, and it's just better to have easy access to the clear CMOS button. But let's say the motherboard's own automatic recovery system isn't that great, because there's a lot of motherboards where that's true, and the automatic recovery sucks. So if it isn't that great, every time you punch in a bad set of memory settings or a bad CPU overclock and the system stops posting, you now need to take off the side panel so that you can reach inside your system, so you can push the clear CMOS button, which for some ungodly reason, instead of being on the rear I/O, is internal. Like, why? Like, you've gone out of your way to put a button. Why isn't it on the rear I/O? Right, and I I'm aware that some people have computers where reaching even the rear I/O is pretty difficult, but it's a hell of a lot more accessible than the freaking internal button, right? Like, come on. Anyway, other things that 14-phase DR MOS power design, sure. Not the most powerful VRM at around this price range. Definitely not the most powerful VRM you can get, but definitely not a weak VRM. Asrock's doing some cute little things with the, like, you see that. Well, let's just scroll through what they have to say about it, because I actually think it's kind of neat. Oh, they also have 12,000 hour rated capacitors, but that's just like Like the thing is, the higher end your motherboard is, the cooler the VRM runs. Therefore, the slower the capacitors age, and at some point, the capacitors are just gonna last basically forever because they're running so cool. So, like that hour rating is at 105 degrees capacitor temperature, and it's just like your caps on a high-end motherboard will not be getting near 105 degrees in the first place. And the other thing is like Asrock's using 12K, but everybody else at this price point uses 10K, so it's not really like a big difference in terms of lifespan. So I wouldn't really pay too much attention to that. Look, it's the lovely things that make your motherboard more expensive, but don't do anything until Intel releases the next generation of CPUs. PCIe 4.0 clock gen, PCIe 4.0 switches, redrivers. I'm pretty sure that's just a standard metal cover going over a regular PCIe slot, but whatever. ASRock wants to call it PCIe 4.0. Oh, yay. Okay, so they did actually include this. So, do you know how to fix VRM temperatures if your VRM just kind of isn't that great in the first place? Well, you stick a fan on it. What do you do when the VRM heatsinks aren't like the funny thing is I feel like they could have designed this to get away with one fan, but of course that would have actually just required any amount of thought, and why have one fan when you can have three? Because the thing is like, so it's an L-shaped heatsink, right? So if you just shoved one fan into the corner of that L, and then had just horizontal fins, then that one fan can ram air down both arms of the heatsink. But instead, they have this abomination where they have two fans on the top side and one fan over here. Like, what the hell is this? Also, why don't you just design a better VRM if you need bloody fans? Admittedly, this isn't the most expensive. It's not the most expensive of Z490 boards, so I guess to their credit, like, if you're like, the thing is, I'd be okay with this on a cheap board because like a small amount of forced airflow is just so much, like, it makes such a huge difference compared to just kind of hoping that the VRM section of the motherboard is actually going to get airflow, because in a lot of standard case airflow configurations, the VRM is basically in an airflow dead spot. So yeah, but still, there's like motherboards out there where the VRM is just so good, like you barely even need a heatsink, and they're not that like, and those boards aren't that much more expensive than this one. So I am not really like, especially because it looks like they're not zero RPM mode. They're doing 90s. So they have, I'm assuming MOSFET North means that this top section of the VRM with the two fans, without the fans on, runs at 62 degrees, and with the fans on, it runs at 53 degrees. Like, so basically those two fans don't actually do anything. Because, like, it's running at 62. That's a very good temperature for a VRM to start with. And then they're like, oh yeah, and then we'll make it run 53. And I was like, why? This, on the other hand, like pushing the capacitors from 90 to 76, okay, that's reasonable. Pushing the hottest region at 91, but 91 degrees on MOSFETs is fine, and 100 degrees, depending on where on the PCB that is, that's also fine. So yeah, this seems really pretty pointless. And also, I'd love to know. Oh, okay, so 5 gigahertz to 900K with water cooling. And it's not exactly what I would consider the 5 gigahertz doesn't tell us what voltage the CPU is at. It might be like the world's best to 900K. It probably isn't, but even then, it's like 5 gigahertz. They're also not saying if this is like AVX or just Cinebench, or like, what is this? What are you running? Like, I don't like three fan. Like, the thing is, this is a freaking Z490 motherboard. Like, you have all the space in the world to build the VRM of your dreams, and Asrock's here, like, you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna whack fans on whatever the hell we managed to put together. Like, I really want to know what actually I think I've seen a review of well, I can't remember what MOSFETs that review mentioned though. But like this is just like we shouldn't need 3 fans on the VRM. That's insane. So like this is concern worthy in my opinion. Like here's the thing. If you don't actually if the fans are there just for like a worst case scenario, like they'll kick on if the VRM hits 125 degrees or something, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. But if they're actually expecting you to use these on the regular, then it's just like, what? Why? And also, if they were for like emergency cooling, I'm pretty sure you could get away with a single fan. Hell, you know what's kind of ridiculous to think about? X299, like the EVGA X299 Dark has 2 VRM fans. That's an X299 board with a 12-phase VRM jammed between like DIMM slots, and that gets away with 2 fans for VRM cooling. And here we have a Z490 board where you have more space for your VRM and more space for heat sinks because you don't have 2 sets of DIMM slots. And Asrock's solution to thermals is 3 freaking fans. It's like there's X299 boards that don't have this much. Like, what is like not like if this was a $200 board, go for as many fans as you find necessary. But this is a $370 board, and the solution to the thermals instead of is just like fans. Okay, fine, fans, have them. I'm not a fan. Anyways, scrolling down, we have audio stuff. I'm not going to talk about the audio stuff because I don't pay attention to audio on motherboards. Like, I'd need to do a bunch of research before I could, share my thoughts on audio. So, yeah. Anyway, we have the metal backplate. Yep, metal backplate is nice. DR MOS integrated premium 68 power choke. You know what I find really funny about this graphic is that this graphic doesn't highlight the inductors, which is like the choke is the inductor. No, they're highlighting the MOSFETs. So I'm going to assume that they actually mean that they have 60 amp MOSFETs, which honestly at that price tag is not that impressive. What else do we have? We have a 2-ounce copper PCB. That's normal. Oh, but this is neat. So the heat dissipating PCB technology. So this is actually kind of neat. Like, I think that's actually cool. Literally cool. So the idea behind this is if you like solder, like PCBs are pretty good heat sinks because they're basically a copper and fiberglass sandwich. And copper is obviously a great thermal conductor. Fiberglass, not so much, but copper's freaking great at conducting heat. Second, like as far as metals are concerned, it's only second to silver. And anyway, but the thing is, so the idea is instead of having the solder mask, which acts as a bit of a thermal insulator, you can sort of, just remove some of the solder mask by, say, using capacitor footprints, which is what they did here. Like those are 0805 capacitor like pads, and they've just kind of used them to put a hole into the solder mask. Then you solder over that, and you basically get lower, like the PCB is better able to shed heat. Now, what I find really annoying with this is that they have this exact same heat dissipating PCB gives the motherboard a more Man, the marketing departments, they're out of control. Anyway, and this design effectively, like this is, I guess it's mysterious. Well, no, I just can't. They're absolutely out of control. And this design effectively takes the heat away from the PCB and lowers down the temperature of the temperature up to 4.1 degrees. Now, the problem I have with this is they quote that 4.1 degrees in every single one of these motherboards, for every single one of these boards. So it's like if we go down to, yeah, this looks like a pile of junk, doesn't it? Does it even have that? No, this doesn't have the thermal enhancement. So, okay, so that's okay. So I chose the wrong board. Let's find something else. Does this have it? This has it, right? Yeah, this has it, right? You can see that just those two strips right there. So if we scroll through this, again, wait, what the hell? There, 4.1 degrees, right? Like so. But this board uses a completely different implementation. Like, there's far more exposed metal here than there is here. And yet, up to 4.1, like, so which of these boards is the actual board getting that 4.1 degree benefit? Which one is it? Because, I'd like to know. Like, does this, because on some of these, I'm going to assume it doesn't do anything, right? And on other, like, So this is one thing that I just kind of find annoying. with their pages, which is just like, yeah, well, whatever. It's not a huge deal, but it's just like I find it annoying that you just have figures that are just the same everywhere, and it's like, well, but they're not even the same implementation. I'm gonna assume that they get that 4.1 degree on one of the boards that runs really hot. In which case, like one, because if it runs really hot, any small improvement to thermal dissipation will make a bigger difference in theory, at least. And the other thing is um, well, actually no, that's all there is to that as far if I remember. Yeah, that's all I actually had to say. Anyway, 2-ounce copper PCB, that's standard for higher end. Actually, yeah, that's standard. I don't know that there's any boards that don't have that. Um, I guess if they don't have that, they won't mention that they don't have that. But anyway, then we have some RGB wank. Then we have Wi-Fi 6. Yay, Dragon. So so you might be like, who the hell is Dragon? Right? I've never heard of this LAN manufacturer Dragon. This sounds like that is very concerning. That like the only thing worse than like a known bad is like when you don't have any idea who the actual brand is, but actually that Dragonland, it's just Realtek. um which like I've obviously, like, I'm pretty sure, like, because they've literally removed every mention of Realtek from this like their motherboard pages as far as I can tell, because even here, right, it's Dragon RTL 8125 BG. Like, that's a Realtek part number. And here's the thing: I know I've complained in the past about Realtek networking. However, I do not test networking performance, so that is more like my anecdotal experience than actual, useful uh, advice, in my opinion. Like, I would not consider my networking like like, I wouldn't put too much weight on what I think makes a good network, like a good network, like a good Ethernet controller, right? Like, I wouldn't put too much weight on that. So yeah, I'm not a fan of just not mentioning that this is Realtek. Like, why go this far to just call it Dragon? Because ultimately, this is actually more concerning. Like, if there's some random ass networking chip manufacturer called Dragon, like, would you rather have them or Realtek? Right? Because Realtek is like, okay, they're very common. They're good enough under, like, yeah, they're generally good enough. I might have, like, I generally would prefer not to have a Realtek, but if I, like, I'd rather have a Realtek than have something I've never heard of, right? Because that's the only thing that I can think of that is like, that is more concerning. So yeah, please don't do this. Just say it's a Realtek LAN if it's a Realtek LAN. Um, you know, or like, I guess, like, well, I also Killer is like the only other networking chip that Killer I'd rank below Realtek. Like, I think I had one motherboard with Killer LAN on it, and I was very quick to get that motherboard out of my system. Like, that was probably the shortest lived motherboard in my daily system, was one with Killer LAN. And I'm not sure if it was because of the Killer LAN or because of something else, but that is like, I definitely remember that board having Killer LAN, so I wonder why I remember that. Um, anyway, what else do we have? Right. So actually, that's kind of it for the Taichi. I think. Right. So basically, VRM looks okay-ish. The thing is, you can actually get 60 amp power stages in a roughly this many phases at like much lower price points. And then there's just like, okay, you have a postcode power button, reset button. Okay, that's nice. I am not a, like, overall, I'm not a fan of this. Um, yeah, like, I'm not sure what it is that they expect me to go like, oh wow, this is a, like, it does have dual LAN, which actually at this price point, it's not actually like, that's actually a nice feature to have, because there's a lot of boards that are single. Like, if you're looking for a motherboard with dual LAN, then yeah, you have dual LAN here, and I think the second one is Intel, right? All right, supports 2.5 gig. And then they have, yeah, they have a 1 gig Intel as well. So, yeah. And in this case, it's even less of a problem that you have a Realtek LAN chip, in my opinion, because it's like if this doesn't work, you can just use the Intel. Right? Like if you have dual LAN, then it's like, then it's even less of a concern, in my opinion. Obviously, I guess some people might buy it specifically because they want the 2.5G, but, you know, like, well, you have dual LAN. Like, I don't get why you know you wouldn't just say it's Realtek, because honestly, like when I first saw Dragon LAN, I was like, wait, did they dig up something that's even worse than Realtek? And then I scrolled through the spec sheet, and it's like, oh, it's just Realtek. Okay, um, like which Realtek, you know, like they've been around for ages. I've not had the best experience with them, but there's plenty of other people who use Realtek on the daily and they don't even realize it. So obviously they're not having that many issues, are they? Um, anyway, um, oh, 50 amp DR MOS. Oh man, okay, that actually really took it down a notch. So the 60 amp power choke. Oh man. Okay, so the graphic was right. The graphic is still wrong, but the chokes are definitely 60, whereas the power stages are 50s. Oh, oh boy. And they're charging 370 for this? Well, now I understand why they need 3 fans. Yep, that explains the cooling scenario situation for the VRM. So what do we have next? I guess let's go with the Extreme4. So the Extreme4, 10 phase. Okay, let's just go to their spec because they're gonna tell. Yeah, this is 50 amp hour DR MOS. Okay. What is the phase configuration though? Because like the thing is, does this have an iGPU out? Oh no. Oh no. It has an HDMI and a display port. Okay, so basically, at best, this is like a 9+1. At worst, it's an 8+2. Um, wait, this is also like a $200 board though, right? Oh yeah, this is like no. Well, the thing is, you can get 12-phase boards at this price point. Admittedly, some of them don't power the iGPU at all because they basically go like, well, instead of. So I guess it depends on your priorities. But the other thing with this board is like this rear I/O. This is depressing. Like look like there's not even 6 proper USB ports on here. Somebody's going to be like, Type C is totally a proper USB port. No, it isn't. I can't plug my keyboard into it. Um, so, like, this right here is not okay for an ATX motherboard at all. Like, just no. Just absolutely. This, like, if you had an ITX board and you were running out of space, then this kind of is like, okay, I can kind of get it. Obviously, you're space constrained. But Asrock, in their infinite wisdom, like, first of all, this board isn't even full ATX, okay? Because this is one of your mounting holes. There's supposed to be a mounting a hole over here, but for some reason, Asrock decided that they're going to use all of this PCB space instead of, you know, for making room for like useful features like USB ports. They did this with it, whatever the hell that is. And yeah, it's like, you know, who needs USB ports, right? Like, who doesn't want to have the rear I/O section of an ITX motherboard on an ATX board? Right. Also, again, we have the dragon instead of just saying Realtek LAN, which is just like, why? Just say it's Realtek. Right. Um, do they have anything else to tell us about this board? 10-phase power design. See, this is the graphic that's supposed to be for the chokes. And then this one is probably going to be supposed to be for the phases. But either way, it doesn't matter. Heat dissipating PCB technology. So another different implementation, again, 4.1 degrees, because of course they've just copy pasted that for all of their boards, and it's just like, so which of these boards actually get this much benefit? Also, I don't believe this motherboard has fans, and this is the board where like I would appreciate the fans a lot, because this is the board where you have an 8-phase with 50 amp power, where you're probably getting an 8-phase V-core with 50 amp power stages, and that's just not going to be quite enough. So, like, ultimately, I'm looking at this and it's just like, so the rear IO is a disaster. Like that's just like on the rear IO alone, I wouldn't buy this because there's no USB ports. Like especially because there's other boards. I know for a fact that at this price point, there are other boards with much nicer rear I/O sections. So it's just like, yeah, no, the rear I/O on this is a joke. It's an absolute freaking disaster. I have no idea, like, what's this for? All right, supports 10th gen. Okay. Supports 42. Like, even the memory speed they're advertising isn't that great. Crossfire X. Crossfire runs on literally everything. Like, unlike SLI, Crossfire will run on absolutely everything that has more than like X4 PCIe lanes, because SLI requires a license, so you need to pay NVIDIA for it. But Crossfire, like, if you got PCIe slots for it, it'll run Crossfire. There's just like that's not really a feature. Like, the Crossfire is so flexible that EVGA has to support it, right? And EVGA is an NVIDIA-only GPU manufacturer. And the EVGA only advertises SLI support, but then, like, Crossfire still works because it's Crossfire. It just works. It's amazing. 11 power phase design. Oh, okay. That's great. Oh, and we still have the 12,000 hour caps. Oh, of course we have. Wait, so how many? I'm just gonna count how many inductors this has in a photo. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Okay, wait a minute. I'm gonna see if Newegg doesn't have a better picture, because apparently I can't count. Okay, nope, that's the same picture. There's 6 up top. Oh, I guess. Okay, so I guess they do have 10 for V-Core. Okay, that's not that bad. I mean, like, well, at this price range, you can get 12s, basically. With, okay, so this is really annoying, is just like how there's no standard on, you know, how many phases you have. Wait, 11. How are they getting 11, though? Oh, I guess they might have 2 inductors in one phase for one of them? Or maybe there's... Wait, is there a VCC? I guess they have a VCCSA phase. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So they're probably going to have like 1 phase of VCCSA, 10 phases of V-Core, and then 1 phase of iGPU. Okay, my opinion has significantly improved at this point for the VRM, because it's not like, if it was an 8 phase, that was just like absolutely no. A 10 phase, you can still get better VRMs. You can still get better VRMs on motherboards with better rear IOs. Also, this has 4 SATA ports. Oh no, 6. Okay. Okay, it has 6 SATA ports. Did not notice that. So, still though, like, this rear IO is a disaster. Also, this is the motherboard where I would have actually, like, appreciated seeing the fans. But no, they put the fans on the more expensive boards. All right, what do we have next? The Steel Legend. This is basically the Extreme, except with... Does it fix the rear IO? I assume it doesn't. Oh boy, why do they have to have so animated websites? Nope, the rear IO is still a catastrophe. And everything else is the same, but the motherboard is white, and I think it's a little bit cheaper for some reason. Yeah, it is a little bit cheaper. It's 10 bucks cheaper. So what did they change? Because I can't see the difference. Maybe the like gray blue paint here is actually 10 bucks. Some very extreme paint you got there. Yeah, no, this just seems to be the same board. Oh wait, I actually, with the Newegg pictures. Wait, they don't have one of the back of that one, but I think they had one that's like the back of one of these. I think it's this one. Yeah. So actually, this is like, you see that over there? That is actually far more impressive than what they have on the front of the board for the heat dissipation, right? Because this is actually right behind the actual power stages, so that is going to, like, because the strip that they have on the front of the board, right, like in front of the capacitor bank, like that's a mile away from the actual heat source, which the actual heat source is, of course, the VRM itself, the power stages, and well, what they have here right behind the power stages, that's actually really cool. Also, I guess this is a 4-layer PCB because we can see all of the memory traces, right? We can see them on both the front and the back. So this might be a 4-layer, which that's probably why it only goes to 4266. Oh boy. Yeah, so the Steel Legend and the Extreme4, I don't get it. Like, Asrock is, especially since it's Asrock, like, Asrock is the manufacturer where I expect to have, like, the $200 motherboard where I'm not impressed by the VRM, and I'm still not impressed by the VRM, but I do expect, like, a ridiculous amount of, you know, USB ports and just sort of, like, features. Like, they have historically had the motherboards where you'd get the most sort of things to plug in and, you know, like most ports to plug into and that kind of thing, but you just not get the like power delivery of some of the other manufacturers. But this is like this is just like it doesn't do anything as far as I can tell that would impress me. So yeah, really not a fan of these boards. um And I've now decided that, you know what, I'm not going to bother with testing the Extreme4. So let's take a look at the Phantom Gaming. Actually, you know what, let's click on the Pro 4 because we're just going to go in order of Asrock's horrible website. This rear I/O is terrible too. I mean, that's not really surprising, but yeah, it's terrible. Also, this somehow does 4400. Wait a minute, are they running like random topologies on these boards? They're totally running like completely random topologies, aren't they? Why is this spec'd at 4400 and the Extreme isn't? Oh, I guess no, this isn't full ATX either. This is like chopped down as well. Like now I'm wondering if the Extreme 4 is like a T topology or something. Because like that would actually like your max clock speed. Let's see. Let's see. Memory QVL. Do they have anything in the QVL? Dim. Oh, wait a minute. 2, 4. Right, 2. This looks like a QVL for a T topology board, which would really explain that 4266 right there, which is not a good thing. And this one, yeah, this one's the same. I guess if you're looking for a T topology board, then, well, the thing is, like, here's the thing. You can do 4133 on a... Also, yes, of course, Asrock. So we're going to claim a memory speed that we don't even have on our own QVL because, you know, like who needs to advertise something that the end users are going to be able to actually do? Also, the only oh man, okay, and the only kit that they have QVL for 4000 is a freaking Rev E memory. So that is just like, well, if you wanted me to have doubts about your memory section, like about the memory overclocking capabilities of a board, this is how to do that. So this is probably like I'm gonna guess it's like a 4-layer T topology, which is just probably the worst thing you could go for. Like T topology, it makes sense as a memory topology if you have like a lot of layers for it. And it makes sense for motherboards where you might want to run like 32 gigs of memory, 32 gigs or 64 gigs or 128 gigs of memory total, which those are expensive memory configurations. So it's a topology that, in my opinion, does not make any sense for a low-end board. And, or even, well, it's a $200. I'd consider, like, the thing is, Z490 bottoms out at 150. This is pretty much at the bottom of the price points. So I'd consider it low-end. Yeah, I am very, very concerned. Like 42 for, like what? Also, and then it's like, so what does this board do that's supposed to impress me, right? Like, so the VRM is the rear IO is a disaster. The memory support, according to, and Asrock tends to be pretty like generous with their own like memory supports claims, and it's just like the memory support they claim is already and I don't know, maybe since the last time, they've changed and this is actually very accurate, but Like, so what is on this board that I'm supposed to go like, oh, this is why I want to buy this board and not like an MSI or a Gigabyte or an Asus? Because, you know, Asus, Gigabyte, and MSI, they're all putting out boards that have me really, really impressed. Around and in similar price ranges to this, and then it's like I look at this thing and this is I like the rear I/O is a catastrophe. And the memory section is like, why? What? This looks like they took I don't know, $60 board and jacked up the price $20 for no reason. That's kind of how this feels to me. And even at $160, like this rear I/O is just like, what the hell, guys? Like, what is this? Where's my freaking USB ports? Did you run out of space? Sure doesn't look like it. Anyway, let's take a look at the Z490 Pro 4. So I assume this is a daisy chain, and we should be able to tell from the QVL, unless the QVL is not finished. Oh, of course. Why would you have a complete QVL? Yes, silly me. Okay, so they apparently use the same... Okay, so I guess we're just kind of stuck trusting that this, for some reason, goes higher than the more expensive boards. So I guess these are actually... I have no idea. Like, I get they might be T-topologies in that case, because otherwise, like, because the thing is, T-topology brings your peak speed down, but it brings your sort of like average speed up. Because like on 2 DIMMs, T-topology isn't great. On 4 DIMMs, T-topology is better than daisy chain, but it's still not as fast as a 2 DIMM daisy chain or a 1 DIMM per channel motherboard, right? So yeah, so for some reason this board right here, that's not the board I clicked on. Clicked on this board. That's... Why are you sending me? Okay, Newegg, it's not even close to the bloody Taichi. Taichi's up here. Okay, and now if I click on this, nope, still going to the Taichi. Cool. Okay, well this is $170. And they're claiming 4400 megahertz. So that's nice. Unfortunately, the QVLs is useless as ever, I guess. It's not like the QVLs are super reliable, but, you know, they're nice for a rough indication of, you know, like they actually tested something. So this seems to have that... Wait, so basically... What? Okay, I am now very confused. Is this supposed to be like a daisy chain version of the Extreme? Because that's what it kind of looks like, right? The rear I/O is still a disaster. You get a VGA port instead of a display port, which actually that's worse. You get heat sinks that like that VR, like that part of the heatsink doesn't look that bad. The top part looks actually kind of pathetic, but it could be a lot worse, I guess. Then the rest of the board looks like this just looks like it doesn't have the silly PCB extension on the side. So, and there's like a missing fan header, and then, wait, and how the hell is this getting 4400? Because this looks like it's a slightly different cut of the same PCB layout. I guess they have a version which is T-topology and one version which is daisy chain? Or maybe the speed claims for these motherboards are just all over the place, and Asrock just doesn't take great care of their website. That's also an option. Anyway, is there anything that I'm particularly impressed by on this? And here okay, Realtek audio, that's fine. I mean, I don't you know, cover audio. So what LAN do we have on here? Oh, this is Intel gigabit. Okay. Well, I think that's the norm at around this price range, so that's not really surprising. Yeah, I gotta say, this is not impressive at all. Like the Asrock low end, like I was expecting to be like, oh, at least they have like a lot of USB ports or something, but it's just like, nope, you don't even get USB ports now. So I am very confused about that. I guess let's do the PG Velocita. So this is a board I'm actually kind of a fan of, mostly because like we have a rear eye. What does Asrock have against USB ports? Like seriously, what do they have against USB ports? Why are there so few USB ports? Also, why, like, this could have a clear CMOS button, couldn't it? Wait, let me guess. They put a clear CMOS button. Oh, they didn't. Okay. Okay, there's just no clear CMOS button whatsoever. Okay, that's fine. If there's no button anywhere, at least it's not in the wrong place, so I can't complain about how, like, they technically implemented the feature just in the wrong location. I can't complain about that, because there's no button whatsoever to complain about. But yeah, this still has, like, this has a postcode power button, reset button, with, you know, some funky PG logos on them. This board's, what is it? 260. 260. That's a very tough competition in that area, in that price range. I wonder if Newegg has some nice pictures of this. Ooh, oh, they're not doing the heat dissipation stuff. Why wouldn't you do the heat dissipation stuff? It looks like they're shielding the memory traces at least partially. Like, that's a ground fill over there. I wonder if they have that on the front. Looks like they're also doing partial ground fills. So I have to assume that this is a 6-layer PCB. Actually, well, no, it's like, wait, do we have a better picture? Oh, this has more zoom. Yeah, this probably has to be this has to be a 6. Like, the thing is, if you have ground all over this area of the motherboard, then it's like the next layer down, like, where's your traces? Because also on the back of the board, there's ground. So, and normally you have an internal ground plane and then like an internal power plane. That's 2 layers. Then you have the ground shields on the top and the bottom, so that's 2 more layers. So I have to assume this is a 6, because otherwise, where are the memory traces? And I might be wrong about that. That's just like my guess at how that's implemented. But generally, if you can't see any memory traces, that means you're looking at a 6-layer PCB. If you can see all the memory traces, then you don't know how many PCB layers there are, because you could be on a, like, the Z490 Dark is a 10-layer PCB, and yet it still shows all of the memory or not all of them necessarily, but it shows a very large number of the memory traces. But if you see any board with a ground shield over the memory, then it's just like, well, you can't, like, there has to be a layer where the memory trace is moved to in order for that ground fill to be on the top and the bottom. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of sad that they're not doing the extra heat dissipation on the back. Then again, they probably don't need it, considering this is one of the boards with a bajillion fans, which I'm sure we shall scroll down to. Yeah, this is one of the boards with the bajillion fans. Because again, why would you design a good heatsink when you can just whack fans on a bad one? Or more like, why would you design a good VRM if you can just throw fans at a bad one? This is supposed to go up to 4666, so this is probably a daisy chain. I wonder if this has a different QVL, or if it's also not finished. Also not finished. Okay. Well, that's very sad. Yeah, it's just not finished. And they're like, why is the rear I/O so bad though? Like, this is one thing that I was used to, like, Asrock having like a good number of USB ports and that kind of thing, and it's just like, this is a $270 board, and like, where are my $270 going, Asrock? Where are they going? Because I don't see where they're going. They're not going into the VRM because you found it necessary to put 3 fans on the damn thing. They're also, like, the other thing is, like, this board, you'll notice that you have the 2 full-size X16 slots, but what's going on with that, Asrock, like, this board, when I first saw it, before, like, the prices leaked, I thought this was going to be, like, a super cost-effective board, because, like, they don't have to have, like, they don't have PCIe 4.0 switches, because you're never going to switch that PCIe slot to the bottom one. Actually, I think they have switches for, like, an M.2 slot over here, I think, maybe. But anyway, like, you wouldn't need a lot of PCIe switch. Like, you don't need redrivers, because this slot over here just goes to the chipset, right? So you're not running your PCIe 4.0 compatible traces all the way from the CPU to the PCIe slot 1 and then PCIe slot 2. You're not doing that. This one goes to the chipset, and that's just 3.0, so that's, you know, it's not really any more expensive to do. yeah, so I figured, like, and also they don't have to pay for an SLI license because there's only one PCIe X16 slot. So I figured, hey, this should be a pretty cost-effective board. But now that I look at it, it's like, okay, so we've got, I mean, if you're, if you're measuring the value of your motherboard based on fans per dollar, yeah, this is up there. This is definitely up there in terms of fans per dollar. 3 fans for $270 on this board. I'm pretty sure this might have the highest fans per dollar ratio of any Z490 motherboard. Um, in terms of, I don't know, like USB ports per dollar, this is a catastrophe. Um, in terms of like phases per dollar or amps per like amps in a power stage per dollar, this is also not doing that great, right? And so it's like, okay, so like what's it doing? Like, did Asrock just decide that they don't like Z490 and then do this? I guess it has a postcode. To be fair, I think it's the only motherboard below $300 with a postcode. So that I guess is kind of a design win. But I don't know. I don't think I would give up USB. Like I would. I don't like. I don't think I would give up this many USB ports for a postcode. Also, well, admittedly, you wouldn't really put a GPU in that PCIe slot anyway. So my usual complaint about like the postcode is going to be covered by a GPU doesn't apply because you're not going to put a GPU down there. Um, I guess it does have 8 SATA ports. I guess that's a thing that you might be like, oh, that's beneficial. Obviously, some of those are being shared with the M.2 slots. Don't ask me which ones. Go check the motherboard manual. I'm not going to read that with you. But yeah. Also, you gotta love how this supports quad crossfire because if you if you buy like 27990s, you can stick 27990s in it. Bam, quad crossfire. Crossfire is great like that. It just doesn't like it'll run through a chipset. It doesn't care. Like it causes some weird issues with performance if you go through a chipset, but it'll run badly. But it's still like it runs. So yeah, crossfire is great like that. Um, So yeah, just overall, this is another motherboard where I'm like, what's it doing? Anyway, let's see if we can find anything actually like impressive. Like there has to be something where I can go like, oh, I like this. Well, okay, you know what? No, just no. Like this is an H series board with a Z series chipset on it. Like what are these heat sinks? Like I like they're better than nothing. You know, they're better than nothing, I guess. Um, that's not saying much. Wait, did they actually? Okay, no. What? Like, what is this? This is the Phantom Gaming 4. 150. Why do you still like? They have this board has the same rear I/O as like the freaking $200 Extreme 4, right? Like, yeah. Like, wait. LAN, 2 USB ports, USB port Type C, Wi-Fi, which nobody needs. Well, I guess, well, it's the AX version, so it's the Wi-Fi version. And then 2 more USB ports and a PS/2. Then you look at the Extreme 4. It's the same rear I/O. Like, what the hell? Why, like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. 50 amp power choke. Cool. Oh, DR MOS. Wait, no, Digi Power VR design. Okay, no, it is on regular. Yeah, you can see a driver chip hiding over there. It's a little driver. Um, so just like just buy your like if you're gonna look at something like this, buy an H series board. Like I wouldn't overclock a 10600K on this because you need to understand a 10600K is essentially an 8700K. An 8700Ks can pull a decent amount of power. This motherboard does not look like it's capable of providing a decent amount of power. In fact, I'd also be concerned if it's actually capable of providing, decently regulated power as well, considering some of the past considering some of the other low-end ASRock boards I've tested, especially the Z370 Extreme 4, where I basically found out like, admittedly, it was a used board, but I don't think that was the main reason that board was so very bad at voltage regulation. Like, that thing was, that board literally ran a CPU that regularly does like 5.1 gigahertz for testing. I needed to run it at like 4.9 because the voltage regulation on that motherboard was so bad it cost me 200 megahertz. Whereas every other motherboard, and there was some motherboards that I wasn't that impressed with voltage regulation wise, and those were still doing 5.1. And then there was the Extreme4 where it's like 4.9. And I was just like, are you kidding me? So anyway, this I would just no, because like the lowest, like the 10600K is basically an 8700K. You wouldn't want to overclock one of those on one of these. Yeah, like no, just no. And like I have no, like, what happened to the Asrock where, you know, you got a bajillion of you, like like I remember getting like postcodes on cheaper boards than everybody else, more USB ports on cheaper boards than everybody else, more SATA ports, more, you know, like more everything really, except like I guess, you know, power delivery and heat sinks, and that's the kind of thing where it was like, okay, that's where, you know, you might want to go for somebody else. But here you're like, it's not even giving you the VRM. Like, so what is it giving you? Okay, so gaming. These are all the same bloody board, aren't they? And they're just reshuffling the networking solution on them. Okay, so we don't need to look at all of those because that's the same board over and over again, and they're all pretty terrible. So then we get to the Phantom Gaming ITX. If this has more, oh no, it doesn't have more USB ports. If this had more USB ports than the ATX boards, I'd blow a fuse. But no, see, this is the thing. This is an ITX board with an ITX looking rear I/O section, right? You don't have that many USB ports. You have your clear CMOS button. You have a freaking clear CMOS button in the appropriate location. Actually, so this is so far the most impressive rear I/O section I've seen on a Z490 Asrock motherboard. Wait, was the Taichi any good? I think the Taichi wasn't that bad, was it? No. Oh, yeah, no, it wasn't, because you, like, it's not that many USB ports, but you still get, you know, some extra USB ports over there. I still, like, wait, this really does only have, yeah, it really does only have, like, 6 USB ports. What the hell? Like, actually, what the hell? Well, this is an ITX board. I mean, I'd still prefer having like 6 real USB ports instead of 5 and a weird one. Oh, actually, that's a Thunderbolt port. I'd still like to have an extra USB port. Thank you very much. But, yeah, like this is, you know, survivable, I guess. But this isn't. This is an ATX board. They have enough space to cram unnecessary well, potentially very necessary fans, but like, what the hell? Why aren't there any USB ports? Anyway, let's go through this. So 4666, so that's not that high considering this is an ITX board. Like, ITX boards should generally have a memory overclocking advantage over their counterparts, but it just looks like the memory situation in terms of the specs from Asrock for all of their boards are just all over the place. So yeah, I have no idea what, this might, they're just not keeping up with the like website information. Okay, here we have a fan. Here I can tolerate the fans. It's an ITX board. You're gonna have a hell of a time fitting large enough heat sinks on it. You can have fans. I do not have a problem with fans on ITX boards. And in fact, it's kind of neat that they figured out how to get a fan on both of the heat sinks. Yeah, so I'm actually somewhat impressed, though I feel like they could have, I guess it's an extruded piece of aluminum, so yeah, that would have been very expensive to do. Like, I was thinking having like the fan inset into like a deeper set of fins, but that would actually, like, that would, I think, require like a lot of extra machining work, and so obviously that's why that's not there, because this way they can just have an aluminum extrusion and you get the shape of the heatsink right off the get-go, and then you just need to cut it. And then, you know, drill some holes into it for the fan instead of having to like drill or mill out a recession into the fin stack, like into the fins for the fan to sit in. Like that, like, sure, you'd have more surface area, but now the heatsink's way more expensive. So yeah, this, you know, like, yeah, you could have a more impressive heatsink, but it would also be way more expensive. That's Thunderbolt 3, 90 amp power chokes, 8-phase power design. Actually, if we go to the specifications, power high density connectors, yeah. Oh, that's one thing to watch. Like ITX with single 8-pin, 10900Ks can pull an impressive amount of power. So that is one thing where it's like that is actually like that like I'm surprised we're not seeing an ITX board with an 8 plus 4-pin configuration. Like just desperately trying to squeeze in an extra 4-pin. I guess the assumption is that you're going to run out of cooling in most ITX builds, you're going to run out of cooling before you run out of power connector. But of course, my main interest in ITX boards is memory overclocking on open air test benches. So I'm not about to run out of CPU cooling. I may run out of power connector. Um, then again, I can just solder on an extra power connector. That's no problem for me. Um, and it's also like the other thing is it's not so much about like you can like if you overload the power connector for a short period of time, not really a big deal. If you overload it for like an 8-hour render, then you might come back to your system after the 8-hour render and realize that where the power connector was, there's a bunch of melted plastic, which is not good. Um, anyway, what else do we have here? So 90 amp power stage is nice, but I think that's pretty much standard for the like Z490 ITX boards. 8-layer PCB. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of like I think both Gigabyte and MSI have a 10-layer ITX board. Admittedly, I think those are also more expensive, right? Where is this? No, they're actually about... Man, what happened to Asrock? Like, what happened? I mean, the 8-layer PCB isn't a big deal, but like... And this ITX board overall just, it looks decent. It looks okay. It doesn't look like a... Like, it's an ITX board. I don't have particularly high standards for them because it's an like, they're ITX boards. Right, what's the VRM total phase count? I think it was 8-phase, right? 8-phase power design, yeah. I guess Asrock isn't taking Z490 seriously. Like that's the only way I can explain like to myself how they have the boards in the scenario they have them in. Like cuz like okay, this is an ITX board. So here, you know, it's not I don't think like for Z390 the Phantom Gaming ITX was actually really like that was a really nice ITX board. For Z490, I think the fact that Asrock managed to squeeze in a pair of fans for their VRM cooling, I think that'll probably give them a nice little thermal advantage. But I don't think this board is as impressive as its predecessor. And also, I want to see if Newegg doesn't have back of board pics. Oh, they do. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering where most of the output filtering went. That's where. Because if you look at it, right, there's only like this little array of the through hole capacitors, and it's just like that's not enough bulk capacitance for Z490. Like you wouldn't want like yeah, that's just not enough capacitance. And then you look at the back of the board, and it's like oh, that's where it went. There's a bunch of aluminum polymers on the back, so you know like these guys up here, and yeah, you have iGPU as well, of course. So yeah, the ITX board I find the least disappointing, but the rest of the lineup is like so the Taichi's okay, I guess, but I feel like what like the thing is I currently like I haven't done a rambling about boards for any of the other manufacturers yet, so I don't have a frame of reference for what a $370 board should look like, but I don't feel like it should look like this. Okay, I think at $370 you should be able to get a lot better than this right here. So yeah, not really a fan of that. Then just like this rear IO, this is just not okay. Like this is a disaster. And on the ITX, I can live with it. It's an ITX board. They regularly don't have much rear IO to start with. But then you have the full ATX boards like the Extreme4, and it's just like, so, USB ports? You heard of them? Where are they? I don't know. And it's just like, and I know you can get like, add-in cards to add USB ports to your motherboard, but it's just like, what does the board do that it costs as much as it does, and it doesn't have any bloody USB ports? Like, I'm trying to look through here to see if there's anything particularly impressive, and I'm not seeing it. Like, I'm just not seeing anything that jumps out to me that's like, oh, this is why you'd want to get this board. Please refer to memory support. I love how they're like, please refer to the memory support list, which isn't even finished, but sure. So yeah, this is just like for X570, Asrock had some boards where it's like they had a relatively nice feature set, but this right here is just like the VRM is a disappointment. The memory support right here is a disappointment. If they update the website to suddenly show like 4800, I'll just be really suspicious. Um, they still have the silly not really a two-phase memory VRM. That's a standard highlight of low-end ASRock motherboards, having an extra inductor for your memory VRM because it looks cool, not because it does anything. Um, so that's fun. You have that, but and I guess you have like the thing is I actually like the thing they did with the PCB here. I think it looks neat, but then it's like, but this looks terrible. This is just an absolute bloody disaster of a rear I/O. Like, freaking USB ports. Why aren't there any? And like, yeah, I'm not impressed at all with this motherboard. And I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe this has some incredible, like maybe the audio on it is incredible or something, but like from what I'm seeing, I'm just seeing a really like it's stripped down as hell, but it doesn't even like it's expensive too. Like it's not even that cheap considering how little everything there is on it. Um so I have no like this just looks like ASRock decided that they're not going to bother with Z490. That they'd much rather be selling X570 boards. And I guess, more power to them, but um well, I guess let's take a look at the Aqua, right? Let's see what ASRock gives you for $1,100, because if they can't give you anything good for 200, like for $260, you don't get much. So what do you get for $1,100? Okay, we get the bloody water block. I get it. Get the water block out of my face. I don't want to. This is my least favorite part of this motherboard. Get Wi-Fi 6. Don't need that. BIOS flashback. Cool. Okay, it's like I think even I'm pretty sure even the cheapest Gigabyte board. Well, actually no, I'm not sure that even the cheapest Gigabyte boards have that. But very cheap Gigabyte motherboard, like down to $200, I think they have BIOS flashback. What else do we have? There's a bunch of buttons over here. That looks interesting. There's a postcode in the wrong location, but this is ASRock. They don't know where the postcode is supposed to go. So that's not new. 16 phase. IR. Oh my god. Wait, they actually got their hands on international rectifier parts for this? That's impressive. OLED. Oh, yay, of course. You have an OLED display. Oh, yeah, because that's exactly what you need. Aqua cooling armor. Well, at least it's a center ejection water block instead of like a side, and like because the thing is, like, the idea with dumping the water right down through a jet plate into the center of the microfins is that now the fresh water has to travel half as much distance before it gets out of the microfins. Whereas if you were shoving the water in from one side and out the other, then you have to travel the full length of the microfins instead of just half the length. So this is more effective for cooling. Server grade low loss PCB. Yeah, this is standard for PCIe 4.0, especially on the high end boards. A set of water cooling fittings uniquely given to the 999 pieces of Z490 Aqua lucky buyers. Oh, okay. So, well, I guess there will be now a 1,000 people more easily identifiable as idiots. It's like, so what motherboard do you have in your system? I have an Aqua. Okay, I'm not talking to you. Thank you very much. Yay. Oh, wait, they also have this cheap ITX. I forgot about that. So they have like a, somewhat expensive ITX board. And also, aluminum polymers are good for transient response. So yeah, this like I'm relatively pleased with the ITX board. The rest of the lineup so far has been just like, well, the Aqua is $1,100, so it's disqualified for being overpriced. And the rest of the lineup's disqualified for not having any USB ports except for the Taichi, but the Taichi's just like, there's other boards at that price point which I feel will do a better job. So anyway, let's take a look at this thing. Okay, we've got the almost 60 amp power choke, so 7-phase power design. What do we have for our specs? 50 amp DRMOS. Okay, and this is a 5+2 VRM, maybe? Let's see if Newegg helps. Oh, I guess technically Asrock has like one of the cheapest MATX boards for Z490, so let's take a look at that. Man, why do they hate USB ports? What did USB ports do to to Asrock? Like, what happened? Why is there no USB ports anymore? Oh, this is neat. Oh man, I like that. I like the heat, like the strips of metal for, well, the solder strips for improved heat dissipation. Like, I like those. Like, I wonder, I'm not sure that they're that effective. Like, I don't know how effective they are, but I like the fact that they're doing them. Like, that's cool. Literally cool. Yeah, and I guess we can kind of tell what the VRM looks like. Yeah, okay, it is a 5-phase. It's not super clear, but you can just about tell that there's like that this seems to be one power plane up here. So both of the phases up there probably go into the same power plane, and then you have 5 phases over here. So you have and this is a 250. Man, would I want to overclock a 6-core on this? Not really. Nah, not really. Especially considering, like, the heatsink here is basically just a metal plate that is bent over the rear I/O. And a 10600K, like, you could get it hot. You could get it really hot. So, I wouldn't really, yeah, no. Not, like, this would be cool if there was, like, an overclock. Like, this would be totally down. I'd be down for overclocking on this with a quad core. And I guess if you're going to run, like stock, then yeah, you can get away with like a 6-core or a 8-core or, like, yeah, if you're not like, if you're running the stock power limits, then this is actually going to be a decent board. But if you're also like, if you're running stock power limits, I also have to ask the question, like, why aren't you on an H series? Why are you on a Z series, right? Because the whole point of the Z series motherboards from Intel is that they give you overclocking. And if you're not going to be overclocking, why are you paying extra for a Z series board? Right? And it's like, so basically having a low-end Z series motherboard that sucks at freaking overclocking is like, why does this exist? Like, the main reason why you would buy a Z series is that it can overclock. And then it's just like, so yeah, I am, man, like, Like, the thing is, like, what so kills me about this is it's literally just the USB ports. Like, it's not even the VRM on a lot of these boards. Like, this is a motherboard that I thought, like personally, I like the looks of this board. I think the little heat dissipate, like, this one admittedly has the smallest implementation of it. Like, the Taichi has more heat dissipating going on than this does. But it's like, oh, you got your post code, you got your power button, reset button. There's no clear CMOS in the rear IO, which is dumb. But well, again, like, that's just like the rear IO on this thing is a freaking disaster, right? And it's just like, because the rest of the board is like, okay, this actually looks decent to me. And then you know, and the fans in the VRM is like, okay, like that just seems like bad heatsink design. But because I wonder how much they're paying for those fans. I feel like a power stage, an inductor, and the supporting SMD components probably cost less than a fan. But anyway, yeah, it's just like I like the look of the board, and so I was kind of excited for this when I saw it, and then it's just like, and then you look at the rear IO section, and it's just like, wait a minute, uh, what? Where did all my ports go? And the thing is like, yeah, this is just so not cool. And like, it's a problem with every single one of their boards in the lineup except the Taichi and Aqua, and the Aqua doesn't count because the Aqua is $1,100 and only suckers buy motherboards for $1,100. Especially when the motherboard just like, especially when most of that price tag is from a silly water block and a bunch of fittings. Like, yeah, so I guess Asrock just hates Z490 because they've not put out a single Z490 motherboard where I can go like this. Like the ITX, the Phantom Gaming ITX, this looks decent, right? Like, it has Thunderbolt 3. It's an ITX board. You don't really get that many USB ports on those in general, so having no USB ports is just kind of like, well, it's ITX. What did you expect? But then the rest of the lineup is just like, they're full-size boards. Where is the connectivity on the rear IO? So yeah, that's it for this video. And ultimately, it just came down to me rambling about how the USB ports are screwed up. But yeah, this is going to be like, because I'm definitely going to be doing roundup, a Z490 motherboard roundup video for Gamers Nexus. And like right now, it just looks like, well, Asrock, you're not getting in. Like, you're not in at all. What, what? Like, everybody else for Z490, I feel like just stepped up their game, and Asrock seemingly just kind of went like, you know what, we're going to build the same boards we built on Z390, except we're going to remove, actually, did they remove USB ports? Let's see if their Z390 motherboards had more USB ports. So, oh boy, this is going to be awkward because the namings are all different. Let's go with the Extreme4, which I wouldn't recommend because I suspect the VRM is terrible. Oh wait, no, they've always hated USB ports. Okay, so that one doesn't have any USB ports. No, I want something that's like supposed to be decent. Well, I like this board. And one, two, three, four, five, six. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this also, the thing is, I'm pretty sure that port right there is Thunderbolt. Yeah, one Intel Thunderbolt 3 Type-C. So basically, the conclusion here is that they've literally gone backwards since Z390. Like, they have a Z390 ITX board with more bloody ports than their freaking Z490s. And this is like $190 board. And they've managed to be like, what the hell were they doing? Okay, this is still a disaster in terms of USB ports, though. So I guess that's just a thing at Asrock, is like they just don't do USB ports. I guess they expect you to just use like the internal USB port headers for all of your USB, but it's just like I'm not really a fan of that, to be completely honest. Okay, I checked the gaming 6, let's check the gaming 7. Oh, come on, get your stupid freaking website. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so this board's the same. This is just another USB port disaster. Like, why though? Like, I don't get it. Why are there more USB ports on these boards? And why does the ITX one have like the most USB ports of them all? Right? Like that's the thing that really like kills me, is like the Z390 ITX has more US, like the 9 has to have more, right? There's no way. Yeah, the 9 has a decent array of USB ports. I don't remember how much this board cost, but also this one has 3 freaking LANs. Like that's like see, this is really like filling out the rear I/O, and then you look at some of the other boards, and it's just like no, no, they're not. Um, there's the Gaming X. Yeah, I'm actually, let's check the Steel Legend, because I'm not sure that this. Oh, so this one has the weird tab thing, but okay, this one's also just a USB port catastrophe. So I guess that's just an Asrock thing, where it's like if you like USB ports, you can't have an Asrock motherboard because Asrock doesn't like USB ports. Um, but that's still, it's just like, then it's like, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all that they have so few, because it's like, because the thing is like you don't have 5 1/4 inch bays anymore. So you know, you could get like those 5 1/4 inch panels with like a bunch of USB ports on them, and they just plug into the USB header, internal USB headers of your motherboard. And it was like, well, you can't have that anymore. Most cases don't do that. So it's like if you want extra USB ports that aren't already in the rear I/O of your motherboard, you're gonna have to buy one of those USB port like rear PCIe slot things, right? And that plugs into your motherboard. Like you can either buy a USB port card, or you can buy a USB just slot fill. That's what I call it, and use one of those. But it's just like, but that's just adding extra cost on top of the motherboard, right? Like, you know, it might just be $5 or $10 for one of those, but probably like 5. But like, still, it's just like now I'm spending more money to compensate for just deficiencies in the design of the motherboard, which is just like the whole point of buying a good motherboard is so that you don't have to buy a bunch of things to make up for, you know, design flaws. Um, so yeah. So far the best Z3 the best Z490 motherboard Asrock has made is this. It's like they should have just taken this and swapped the chipset, and I would have been more impressed by that than everything they managed to put out on Z490 proper. Because yeah, and then of course like that, because they also had the Taichis, and the Taichis on Z390 were a lot cheaper than they are on Z490, and you know, like, yeah, it's not the most USB port heavy rear I/O I've ever seen, but it's not as bad as what they have on the freaking Z490. Um, so yeah, now this is actually it for the video. Um, Asrock hates USB ports. That's what I've learned today. They really hate USB ports. So yeah, I guess thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. And if you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, then I have a Patreon where you can support me directly. There's a link to that down in the description below. Originally, I was planning, like, with Z490 coming out, I was planning to, like, buy a Z490 Asrock board, but looking at these, it's like the only one that is, like, a mother... Like, I'm looking at these, and it's just like, no. These just, no. There's no USB ports. Like, that's not okay. Okay, like, and there's nothing else about the boards that would actually be like interesting to me, because it's just like, yeah. So Anyway, but yeah, so there's a Patreon, which obviously is used for doing things like buying Asrock motherboards, so I can be more disappointed at them in person than just looking at the photos and being disappointed. Then I can actually buy it and stare at disbelief at the actual physical board, at what the hell just came out of that box. So the Patreon makes that possible. Then there's also the HOC Teespring store, which achieves the exact same thing as the Patreon, except instead of basically getting nothing, you get a shirt and or a poster or a sticker or whatever. There's like a bunch of merch options on Teespring. So yeah, if you'd like to check those out, there's a link to Teespring down in the description below as well. And that is it for this video. And I will, of course, be going through all of the other board vendors as well. Man, Asrock, like I hope I don't like. Well, if I notice something in the later videos where it's like, oh, I might have been unfair to Asrock because everybody's axing USB ports, then I guess I'll correct myself at a later date. But initially, like, I'm pretty sure I've seen $200 boards with way more USB ports than what Asrock is offering. Yeah, well, you know, if I have to recommend a board, I'll just recommend one of those instead. Because the thing is, I'm pretty sure those also have better power delivery. And then it's just like, so what does the Asrock board do better? I don't know, look better maybe? Which to me is like, if you're buying your motherboard based on looks, then you shouldn't be asking me for what motherboard you like for motherboard advice. So, yeah, anyway, that is actually completely it now. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.